pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mr. Brennan.
Honorable Mayor Ron Shaver.
Here.
Councilmember Dan Marlar.
Here.
Christine Casto.
Here.
Allison Howe.
Here.
Clint Anderson.
Here.
Lisa Northrup.
Here.
Kevin Lindell.
Here. Okay, first on our agenda is possible action on selection of a company to provide on-call engineering services for the water and wastewater plants and systems. Mr. Nation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We've done this with some of our other utility departments where we bring somebody in for those situations that are kind of beyond the expertise of what we have on staff. The water and wastewater we'd been holding off on. We actually started this process earlier this spring along with the electric and the gas utility, but I had enough projects still going under the last contract that I was kind of waiting until we got through those projects, or at least far enough along in those projects to begin this process. During the last couple of weeks and now going on a month or so, we've had a situation where we've been contacted to look into some of our stuff out at the wastewater treatment plant for Western Sugar with some possible treatment options. And so it kind of solidified our choice to go with, once again, Merrick and use the skill set that we have with our current consultant and continue that along. I know Ron's fully aware of Terry Kenyon with Merrick. He's basically been with the city through the development of our water treatment plant and our wastewater treatment plants. So his familiarity with everything is, it's nice to have that there. And with some of the things that we're doing right now, specifically with looking at our discharge permit and the capabilities of our plant, we really felt that it was necessary to go ahead and keep that relationship going. And so that's why I'm here tonight asking that we can go ahead and continue with our on-call services with Merrick Consulting and ask council approval for the mayor to sign that on-call services agreement.
And it only costs us if we use them for on-call?
Absolutely. There's no retainage type thing situation. Okay. It's just whenever, and when we get into a project, we basically have their billing rate ahead of time, but when we have a specific project, we have them sit down and prepare us a scope and then get us a cost estimate back so we know what we're getting into before we start.
It just keeps us from having to go out and vet people.
Yes.
At the time when we need.
Yes.
So.
How much do we have budgeted for that line item?
It depends. I would have to go look. It's, you know, depending on the year and the department. Sometimes it's 10,000, sometimes it's as much as 40,000. Mm-hmm. If we know that we have a really big project coming up that we're going to have a fair amount of engineering work, we'll up that. But typically it's between $20,000 and $40,000 depending on which department we're talking about.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Nation? If there are none, I'd entertain action.
Your Honor, I offer a resolution approving the mayor to sign the service agreement with American Company for water and wastewater engineering services.
Second.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Allison Howe. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brent.
Next, we have presentation and possible action on first reading of an ordinance 1198 adopting and amending the electrical code and the energy code, and request to schedule a public hearing for an ordinance on November 21st.
Your Honor, I think that might be
the I wrote on the wrong one.
Right. We have a revised agenda that
Steve, you look lost.
Yep, we can switch it up. I'm good.
Yeah, next.
Notice he was ready to dance.
I was going to get Mike
all
out
good.
of here quick. Well, we do have possible action on first reading, or on the selection of a company to provide on-call engineering service. Number 4 is 1197 ordinance amending the land use code, and request to schedule a public hearing on the ordinance for November 21st. Mr. Glameyer.
That's the one. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and
I
Council.
put my notes on the wrong one.
No worries. We're happy to come before you tonight with a few changes that staff has identified in Chapter 20 of the Land Use Code. As I've been here a few months and been working through various projects and things that are going on in the city, we've just identified some areas that need clarified, amended, and some additional changes or additions to the code. We're not finished. We continue to look at the code in detail every time we get a request for a business or some development, and just make sure that we're falling in line with what they're looking for and what the best needs of the city and the citizens are. So here's a few changes tonight before you, but no doubt we'll be back with others as we identify those. But more specifically, what you have before you tonight are a couple of changes, one to the sign code, and then one to the zoning district usage table. So we'll tackle the sign code first. I know you spent a lot of time going through a sign code revision. And what we have found is that while it works well in some areas, we're finding that in some areas it's really more onerous and more difficult on existing businesses or businesses that are looking to come in and make a change. We have a specific instance where we've got a business that's actually looking to rebrand and install new signs, and it's actually less than what they currently have, but is way more than what we allow by our code. And that's not the first time I've run into this issue, so I thought it was probably best to try to tackle it in some way. And I think a simple fix to the sign code tonight is to really allow a business to count frontage that might be on a private drive or a private access. If you think about Walmart in particular, we've got businesses that are accessed internally from the Walmart site, but you can't actually access from Barlow Road. And so they don't get to count the frontage of that access into Walmart and around the back side. They only get to count the frontage on Barlow. Well, that's very limited to them and their ability to create square footage for signage. Yet folks read the signs around the back side as they're accessing the business. So what you've got in the sign code change tonight is to allow us to use frontages or private accesses for square footage calculations in signage for the businesses. So we've added some language to the frontage and added a definition for street frontage under the street facing definition. So it clarifies that. It allows us to give them a little bit more flexibility to have the signage they have and the access, utilize the access they have and the signs adjacent to that access. So that's the sign code change for the most part. We also did increase the overall maximum in one area, the industrial or the face that's on the interstate. Mm-hmm. We increased that a little because, as you know, interstate facing signage, the more of that you can have along the interstate, the better. And so we increased the maximum a little there to allow some flexibility for those businesses that are accessible or at least visible from the interstate.
Does that include 34 as well?
Well, 34.
That was where our sign code
yeah.
happened.
Yeah, and so those businesses are typically in the BI or the BII part of the tables, but they already had a higher maximum, so you'll see that I think you'll find that they have that flexibility. But any business that has a private access frontage is affected by this change. It actually allows them an increased amount of square footage.
Perfect.
So.
You got this one kind of chart here that says services, and then it has animal clinic and drive-in, and it's got P's and S's and everything, and I was a little too dense to figure out what that was supposed to represent.
Permitted.
Looking for specifically.
On the first page of the ordinance at the bottom.
Oh, I'm going to deal with that on the second part of the change that we're
okay.
requesting tonight.
Okay.
So let me just ask if there are any other questions to the sign code changes.
Okay.
So let's talk.
Move on quick.
Yeah, no, sure. Let's talk about the use district table, which is the table you're referring to. What we have in the code currently is a chart, and the table's much larger than what you have in the ordinance tonight. If you look in the code, you'll see many different types of usages that are allowed within the city. And those are broke out by different zoning districts. So we have a snapshot of that table by zoning district that we want to make a change to tonight. Under the services category in that table, currently there is no definition or line item for hotel and motel. As you know, we have a few of those, and we're getting a few new ones. And what I found is that just about every hotel and motel we have is non-conforming because we don't have a usage classification for them. We deal with them under parking, but we've never dealt with them under zoning. So I think it's time we fix that problem. And so what we're asking tonight is that we would actually add a line item under services, a new line item of hotels and motels, and make them a permitted use, or what we call a use by right, in 3 of the zoning districts, and a special use permit, or we would come to you and ask if they decided to build in the business park district. So that's what this table is in front of you. It's a snapshot of the usage district table that's in Chapter 20, but we've added what's underlined there, hotels and motels, and the permitted uses in the districts of transitional, mixed-use business, which is the B1 district, and general use business district, which is the B2 district. And then the special use, the S, is under the business park district, which we actually don't even have on our zoning map. So I'm not sure. We just never designated an area as business park district yet. We may someday, I don't know. But in any case, hotels and motels, the current ones and the new ones that we're looking at would all be conforming in these usage districts and be allowed to exist. Whereas right now, we had to sort of deal with those as a director decision, and that's not really a good way to govern. I shouldn't be making all the decisions. So that change is before you tonight. We also increased the allowable height in these zones, other than the transitional zone, and I'll speak to that in a minute, to 60 feet, because most of our hotels are at least, they're getting to be that tall. You may remember you had to deal with a special use request on a height for the Fairfield Inn. So we want to avoid that. If they're a use by right, they ought to be able to build to at least 60 feet. So that's the other change in the use district. We did not change the height in the transitional zone, and the reason we didn't do that, and Jason and I talked about this today, is the transitional zone allows for many different uses. It allows for residential, business, and a potential hotel. So we didn't really feel comfortable having a 60-foot hotel potentially next to a single-family home. So we want to have that ability and flexibility to discuss that with developers if they do come in under the transitional zoning district, and talk about what the entire area would look like before we allow just a 60-foot tall building next to a small home. We did add definitions for hotels and motels. Jason did a lot of research and went around the state, and I think these are good definitions. There were some way more cumbersome than what you had before you, but I thought this captured really the flavor of what we were looking to do. And I think that pretty much takes care of the changes that we're requesting. So we would recommend that you would adopt this ordinance as presented and set the public hearing for the 21st. So, be glad to answer any questions.
I would just like to say the memo you put together was put together very well.
Thank you.
Very explanatory. I'm glad to see that you addressed all of the very visual discrepancies or problems that we had in that. And didn't go months and months and hours with the sign code. So.
Yeah.
It actually comes out to be more business friendly, and that's where we would like to be in our community. So I just like to let you know it's put together very well and easy to read and understand. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And we will have some other sign code changes coming. There's no doubt. I mean, I've already had a few other issues crop up that I want to address, and research a little more before I bring something forward. But we do have some other things that I think are challenges for you, and we are trying to be a lot more flexible and a lot more friendly to what we're trying to do here. So,
Good. Does anybody else have any questions for Steve?
Well done.
If there are none, I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution on first reading of ordinance number 1197, amending the land use code, and request to schedule a public hearing on the ordinance for November 21st.
Second.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Christine Casteau. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, number 5. Now we have a presentation and possible action on the first reading of ordinance 1198, amending the electric code, energy code, and request to schedule a public hearing on the ordinance for November 1st. Mr. Kirkendall.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we'll start with the energy code first, which when we adopted it, all the codes at the beginning of this year, we put a 1-year hold on the 2015 code. I tried to get some classes put together, and the few that I got put together in the comments that I have, and some of the costs that were concern of the contractors, basically with the required air blower test and duct test on your systems. Out here, it costs a lot more than the Front Range. So, and talking to the ladies that came out and did the last class, you can get stuff done up in the Front Range for $300, and out here you're over $1,000. And so we're working on a process to maybe still make the air blower test and the duct test an option and not mandatory. And I'm working with the Colorado chapter to find the right verbiage to come back to council at a later time next year to would not make things worse by just saying take it out, because it kind of affects everything. Just you got to be sure. The energy code's getting more strict, so I just wanted to give us more time to get that put together and not start enforcing it January 1st. And I think that would be very hurtful for the builders in this area to try to meet that quick without us looking at it fully to see if we can get something that's more friendly to us out here. So that would be the first change, is just change the date of effectiveness of when the energy code would go into from January 1st to July 1st of 2018. And then the second one this year, the state of Colorado, and we have to follow suit with them. We have basically 12 months, and that gives us a chance if we want to do some amendments and stuff on the electrical code. And one of the confusions that it depends on which jurisdiction you're in, it has to do with where the electrical panels are located. And it's not real clear if a door is considered an obstruction or not. And so I wanted to make that clear, because I had a few cases where a local electrician and one that came in and worked on a job from out of this area were concerned that they would be working on a panel behind a door. Somebody opens it up, don't know they're there. Now they're going to be pushed into the bus work. And then they were also concerned, sir, that in homes sometimes you can't always locate a panel where you want to, and since you don't have the traffic flow you'd have in a commercial building, that I made an amendment so that single-family dwellings could have it behind the door, because then you can control that easier than you can when one was going to be behind a break room door and the other one was going to be behind in a swimming pool area where you go in to maintenance the swimming pool and somebody's working behind it, and now you're pushing them into the electrical box. So that was basically all we did, is we added that verbiage that says you can't put it behind a walk-in door. And then the other one was to kind of clear up what we already had on the location, the distance between the wires that come into the building. The electrical code says as close as possible, but don't give a distance. But our codes is always specified 15 feet, but they had specified rigid conduit, and there's so much other stuff out there that works better than that, so I just wanted to I went through the code and what's allowed in the code to use the different type of conduits. I just basically said, yeah, we can use these type of conduits so that they can have the flexibility to use plastic or flexible material instead of the rigid stuff, and not change the distance. And then the other one is we're getting rid of item 4, which is under what we have in our 20-4-580. Basically says that has to be 7 feet for the disconnect. Well, the National Electrical Code, we're in violation of that because they say no higher than 6'7". Mm-hmm. So we're just getting rid of that, and everybody just follows what the electrical code says anyway, so we no longer need that, where it puts the city of Fort Morgan in violation of that requirement. So if you have any questions, if not, I recommend that you would consider these adoptions and set the public hearing for November 21st.
So do you want the effective date for the energy code for July 18?
1st, 2018.
Okay, and the others are going to be January 1st?
The other one would be, talking to Jason, as soon as the ordinance is passed, then it'll be 5 days after that, then it'll be come into effect.
Okay.
So the electrical code is something that we need to change more immediate to make sure we're in compliance, and the energy code is something that we've set out in advance. One other change I wanted to highlight briefly, under the adoption of the electric code, for the last several years, we had it worded back to when we adopted the electrical code several years ago, so we had a lot of contractors confused as to what code we're using. So we removed the original verbiage to adopting the 2012 code, I believe it was, or 2009 code or whatever, removing that out of the code and just saying we're sticking with whatever the current state standard is. We have to by law anyways, but now we don't have contractors trying to research our code saying we're on the 2012 code, get their design and everything figured out for a code that we don't use. So we tried to adjust that to make it a little bit easier for everyone.
Yeah, and like Jason's saying, both the plumbing code and the electrical code have a 12-month mandatory attached to. Once the state adopts a code, we have to enforce that code or something equal or more restrictive than that code. And the changes that I'm proposing, one is going to be a little bit more restrictive because it basically says don't put your panel behind the door, and the other one says you can go 15 feet, but you have to have this type of raceway. And it's just to protect the unprotected wires coming into the house so somebody doesn't hit it with a nail or something else, so you don't rely on the transformer to kick off before it blows the fuse.
Yeah, Litton wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
So would that just be the door swing would be changed?
Yeah,
It
basically.
Can't open into the panel?
You can't swing the door in front of the panel, so it can swing out but not in over the panel.
Any questions?
So this is, I'm just, trying to wrap my mind around the timing for which piece. So when we're passing this resolution for these codes, the language is already in there, like for which one goes when.
Yes, the energy code is specifying changing the date from July 1st, 2018 to July 1st, 2018.
Okay.
And then the electrical code is, as soon as the amendments passed or rejected, whatever the case may be, then it's whatever the legal time we have to have after that's been done.
Awesome. So this is going to be a great safety thing and help streamline the process for developers, right?
Yeah, the energy code one gives us a chance to work with the contractors and the people who write the codes and set on the code panels and teach it to make sure we can maybe not be mandated to do some of the stuff that the energy code's requiring them, which will be more expense to the local contractor. And then the electrical one is obviously some safety and some clarification on on some raceways, and to get rid of a conflict where we were less restrictive than what the state was, and we can't be less restrictive, and that's the height requirement of the disconnect.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution on first reading of ordinance number 1198, adopting and amending the electrical code and energy code, and request to schedule a public hearing on this ordinance for November 21st.
Second.
A resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Allison Howell. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Thanks, Mike.
Going to be a busy day on November 21st.
Next, we have a presentation of possible action on the first reading of an ordinance 1199, eliminating jail as a possible penalty in the Fort Morgan Municipal Court cases, and request to schedule a public hearing on November 21st. Mr. Wells and Mr. Myers.
Well, I'll let Mr. Myers kind of talk about the legal aspects of why we need to go this direction, but I want to thank John Brennan and Amanda Dunn and our judge, Dennis Brandenburg. It's a long day today. I'd like to thank Dennis and Jason. We've spent, and the chief, we've spent a lot of time talking about these issues and really trying to come up with the best policies going to be in the court moving forward. Obviously, we're balancing the economics with justice within the community, and we spent an awful lot of time talking about the best way to work on this to meet the legal requirements and be efficient in our operations. So I'll let Jason kind of talk about the history that kind of led up to this change and what we're proposing tonight.
So in the interest of brevity, I'll try to keep it as short and concise as possible. The changes from the state legislature have been happening for about 4.5, 5 years now. Every year, the state legislature passes another set of bills that continually restricts the ability of the municipal court to operate in the way that it was. I wouldn't say that necessarily good or bad, because that's a political opinion, I suppose, but it definitely restricts the way that the municipal court has been allowed to operate. And so you, just as a brief example, 5 years ago, anybody who was in court on a potentially jailable offense, the prosecution could waive that seeking jail, and then that would no longer mandate court-appointed counsel. That law was changed, and so it didn't matter whether or not the prosecution was seeking jail time. People were entitled to a court-appointed attorney, regardless of whether or not jail was being sought. So if you rewind, we adjusted the municipal code to only seek jail in certain circumstances. Some of the more recent changes have basically stated that if anybody's in custody on a jailable offense, regardless of whether or not they're indigent, they have to have a court-appointed attorney available at the time they're talking to the judge, which creates a lot of concerns on how do we have a court-appointed attorney available every Wednesday, whether we may or may not have cases. So we're in essence paying an attorney to sit there just in case. And how does that work with video advisement? How do we make sure that attorney and their client have the opportunity to have frank and a private discussion between them if we have one person in the jail and one person in our courtroom? And so there was a lot of operational concerns, and so those are some of the issues that we're kind of pushing this together. Some of those the state statutes were becoming effective earlier next year, and so that's why we're kind of being proactive rather than, our suggestion is not to throw tons and tons of money at the municipal court for these issues, and if as appropriate, if the individual needs jail time, they can be written into county court. If it's something that municipal court can handle, then the officers have the discretion to write it into municipal court. But this will ultimately result in operational efficiencies and a lot less cost to the court and thereby the citizens of Fort Morgan. I do want it to note that I did go to the legislature on these issues 2 years ago when it first brought up, and I did testify at the state legislature at their committee when they were hearing this. I informed them of all of the concerns that we have from a rural community. I got grilled for about 30 minutes, which was a long time. It felt like hours. And in essence, they don't care about the rural communities and how it impacts us. They were really thinking about making sure the larger communities who have the ability to make this happen, that's where their focus was on, and this is the result. So happy to answer questions.
Is this going to cause any issues in the county? If we have things written over to the county, is that going to cause concerns with them?
I guess a couple of caveats. You can still be written into municipal court. We just can't jail you on certain things. And to be fair, 4 years ago, when we adjusted it, we removed jail as a potential option for most municipal court violations. This was the last kind of 5. There is one still remaining, and it has to do with sewer discharge, which is something that doesn't get written into municipal court very often, but we have to keep that as a part of our EPA settlement. So this just removes the last few jailable offenses. You can still be written into municipal court for assault and disorderly and resisting arrest. We just can't put you in jail for it anymore if this passes. So the burden to the county court should be minimal at best. And to be fair, most people that, in my experience prosecuting here in the last 5 years, most of the people who need jail time in order to resolve their behavior issues are probably going to get written into county court anyways. Repeat offenders typically is where you see those.
I mean, so is it correct, an officer has the choice at the time of a incident to which court they write an offense into, correct?
Correct.
And so on more severe cases, they probably are already putting them into county court versus into municipal court for those larger offenses.
Certainly, and we do have limited jurisdiction in the municipal court, so we can't do anything with felonies, like a DUI would never come to municipal court. Theft over $2,000, by definition, we can't try in municipal court, but we have concurrent jurisdiction over pretty much everything else. And then we have exclusive jurisdiction on municipal ordinance only things. So your weed tickets, when I say weed tickets, not marijuana, but overgrown shrubbery tickets, have to, by definition, go to municipal court because county court doesn't have jurisdiction over those. But
perfect. Thank you.
I know there's been some discussion that this may have impacts on the county court, but we've looked at it and we don't anticipate, based upon the tickets that we've written historically and what we see going forward, to have any substantial impact or any impact really on the county court. So it's our recommendation that you adopt the changes for efficiency. So.
Dan asked my only question, so we're good.
I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution on first reading of ordinance number 1199, eliminating jail as a possible penalty in Fort Morgan Municipal Court cases, and request to schedule a public hearing on the ordinance for November 21st.
Second.
A resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Christine Casteau. Vote by roll call.
That resolution passes unanimously.
Thanks for your work, Jason. Next, we have a presentation and possible action on a first reading of an ordinance 1200 to adopt the 2018 budget, set the mill levy, and appropriate monies to the various funds within the city of Fort Morgan, and request to schedule a public hearing on the ordinance for November 21st. Mr. Wells.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. You have in front of you the ordinance that will officially adopt what we will be spending next year. And before we get to that, I want to thank Jeannie for all of her hard work. She's spent a lot of time putting together things for us and reviewing the numbers and making sure everything is right. So I really want to thank her and appreciate the work that she's put in there. I also want to thank all the other managers. Obviously, the budget is a big deal every year, and it's quite a production. It takes a lot of time for everybody to go through, make sure that they're spending their money appropriately and budgeting for the things that we need coming up. And that we take an awful lot of time to make sure that each manager knows what they're doing, and they bring that to council and present that to council I think that the way that we do it, well, may not be the quickest way. I think it's the most efficient way to get things done, to make sure that the elected officials are comfortable with the expenditures made in each of the departments. And so next year, we'll start this process over again. I know we're going to pass this, and in just a few months, we'll be back into the 2019 budget. But I want to thank council, too, because I know it's a lot of work for you, a lot of attention to detail in some of the expenditures. And so I want to thank you for all of your attention and hard work on it as well. We've made a couple of minor changes in what you received last week, and then we'll go into questions that you may have. One of the things that we made an adjustment to was in the water fund. We've booked the principal amount for our bond payment, sometimes in the budget and sometimes not. Last year we decided it made more sense to show everything in the budget, so we're doing the same thing this year. So we made a minor modification to include the principal payment for our bonds into the budget, so it appears there. We had to make a couple of changes with regard to the police and fire pensions. There were just some minor errors that needed to be corrected to make sure we had adequate money to cover those things. We also have lowered the gas revenues because we made a change in the gas rates, so our gas revenues were adjusted accordingly. And one of the things that there's two major issues with this budget. Currently, I've just checked. I know that the results aren't in from the election. If 2C passes, there's approximately $1.9 million that we've budgeted in the budget, or that will go into the budget if this is passed moving forward. I don't believe, do we have it in the budget now? We don't have the $1.9 million in the budget now. That will be contingent upon the outcome of the election tonight. So you don't see that presented here. We will bring a new amended ordinance for the second reading if it passes tonight with $1.9 million. We also included a very rough estimate on what we believe it will cost to finish out the access network for our fiber optic project. Want to thank Jason and Brent. We've spent an awful lot of time working through contracts, especially Jason. He gets to read the fine print. And we've had some really good meetings. I think things are coming into where we want them to be in our public-private partnership. But we've added $4 million out of reserves in the electric fund for the development of the final loop, the access ring in the fiber optic network. What that does for us is, as our goal to have a ubiquitous build out. Everybody likes to use the word ubiquitous, but it just means everybody gets it at the same time. So that will finish out our portion of what that contract would look like next year. And then as part of that agreement, we're still working on 100% reimbursement over a period of time of all the capital that we put into the system. So we're still moving forward with that, but one of the changes to the budget is including that $4 million, which is a rough estimate on what that will cost to finish out the fiber optic loop. Now with that, I'd open it up to any questions that you may have with regard to the budget process or anything related to the budget.
Last year we had budgeted money for a GIS person.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice that in the budget this year. Are we not doing that anymore?
No, it's in the salary line item. This year we had a kind of a separate item because we weren't sure if we were going to do a consultant, and what we ended up doing was we got some consulting work to start building the foundation platform for what we're going to do. We just made an offer to a GIS person who's going to start in a couple of weeks, and so that department is going to be up and running before the end of the year. But it is budgeted for next year.
Cool.
It's a great question. Any other questions or concerns about the budget or the ordinance? That's our recommendation that council adopt this on first reading, which would include setting the mill levy and getting things all set up for 2018.
Before we do that, could we go through it one more time?
Sure. You want to start on?
Problem is, they don't
I'm
think you're
with
joking.
Dan on that.
Hey, we work for you.
I would entertain a resolution. You
Your
have
Honor,
a
I would
copy of it at home.
I would offer a resolution on first reading of ordinance number 1200 to adopt the 2018 budget, set the mill levy, and appropriate monies to the various funds within the city of Fort Morgan, and to request a public hearing be scheduled on the ordinance for November 21st, 2017.
Second.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Christine Casteau. Vote by roll call. Unless you
That
really want to
resolution
go
carries
through.
unanimously.
Too late. It's
Too late.
Too late.
You did get everybody's attention, my friend.
Too late.
I was wondering, do we need to start putting up metal detectors so we can protect Councilman Dan from hostile?
Just
Next
being
is
thorough.
consent agenda. Mr.
Thank you, Your
Brennan.
Honor. Tonight's consent agenda includes item A, approval of the minutes of the October 17th, 2017 City Council regular meeting, and item B, second reading and final approval of ordinance number 1196, modifying the planned unit development for Riverview Commons and authorization to publish by title only. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business by the council and will be enacted with a single motion and a single vote by roll call. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is deemed necessary, that item should be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately.
I would entertain a resolution on accepting the consent agenda as presented.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution accepting the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
A resolution by Christine Casteau and a second by Allison Howe. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Next, we have public comments and audience participation for items not on the agenda. It's your time to speak. Seeing none, reports by officials and staff.
Thank you, Your Honor. I know there are a few announcements by some of the staff tonight, but I'll begin by just bringing up to the council and public that Christmas Capital of the Plains is on its way. We will have a return visit by our friend Snowzilla. There's also going to be an epic soup and chili cook-off. This year there's a challenge between not only yours truly and the and the benevolent Jason Myers, but we also have
The immediate past champion.
That might be the benevolence in it, I don't know. But we also have a challenge with the Rotary and Lions Club to see who can do the best, you know, which team is going to have the best chili and the best soup. We're doing soup and chili this year, so it's going to be a really good thing. The city is going to be sponsoring one of the Saturdays. We'll be doing golf with Ty. Hopefully we don't have snow. We'll be doing Golfzilla. So we will not only have Snowzilla, we'll have Golfzilla, and hopefully some decent weather for that. A lot of great activities. Downtown, we'll have the movies for families every Saturday. As we know, when people ask why are we the Christmas capital of the Plains, it's because we do more in the 4 weeks before Christmas than any other community in the state of Colorado. I would tell anybody to try and take us on for all that we do. And it's all a bunch of volunteers that come out and make it happen. So that's really great. Get ready for Christmas. It's Christmas capital of the Plains. Invite your neighbors to come out. It'd be great. We're currently working through some final candidates for the Best and Brightest program. We've been invited to do that program again. We have some very good candidates that are very interested in coming out to our community and joining us. We were also told that if we wanted to have two, we are so good we could take two. I'm not sure we're going to have that discussion internally. But again, just to recap, the Best and Brightest program are students that are attending the University of Colorado Denver School of Public Affairs and Masters in Public Administration programs. They get a reduced tuition to come and work, and they come and work for a municipality. Half of their pay is covered by DOLA. So we basically get a full-time person for 2 years at half the cost of what we would be paying them. So it's a great program. We had a really good experience with Chelsea. She was our first Best and Brightest, and we have a couple of opportunities, I think, to help us moving forward with some of the candidates we have now. If we decide to do two, I'll let you know.
Can we get a CSU one?
Actually, we talked about it.
Let's just,
Sorry.
let's just do it.
Well, I think, I think we've got to find someone that's, we'll work on it. Right now, I know we're in green and gold territory. We're going to be very careful. We're going to have Brent do the Best and Brightest program, but he's going to find a friend for us. You know, Ty, there's nothing wrong with CU, is there? See, there you go.
Sorry, Ty.
It's a great junior.
I think you should take a school where we don't have any employees from, so there's not a
So moving on.
San Diego State Aztec.
We can do that. Veterans Day this Friday, so the offices will be closed. If you need anything, let us know on Thursday. Obviously, you can contact me at any time if you need anything. We also want to thank the 2C committee, the Strictly for Streets committee. Tonight's the last night to see how their efforts paid off. We had a lot of members from the community that stepped up, participated, and actually drove this campaign. We're very happy with the response of the committee and what they've done to a problem that they see is important to our community, and that's fixing the streets. So we want to thank the citizens who get involved in the community to try and make our community a better place. And not just those on the Strictly for Streets committee, but we have a lot of committees that report back to the council and commissions that report back to the council and work with the council on policy issues. And, you know, we really can't get it done in our community without the citizen involvement. So I want to thank everybody who gets involved and makes a difference. And with that, I know that there are a few other announcements. Yes?
On Monday, the Citizens Police Academy graduates, and we're excited about that.
That'll be a good experience, yeah. Yeah, you can come on up.
Well, despite the snow this morning, it still is fall. And we're still trying to pick up leaves. You've probably seen our crews are out. We've got a couple of crews out going around town grabbing leaves off the streets. And we're going to continue to do that until the 26th. So we just encourage our citizens to continue to get those raked up out into the road, and we'll be by and get them picked up until the 26th, and they should all be off by then, I hope. We do have a few calls about, hey, you were here and I've raked more, please come back, and we will. But we're trying to be, trying to make the rounds so we don't immediately go back, but we will be back if you've got more. We appreciate your patience, but we'll be back and grab those, but we are out. And we're excited to get those all picked up and out to the compost dump out there. So,
and encourage the citizens not to park on top of the piles of leaves.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we'll take your cars too. They just don't go to the same pile. So. Yeah. No, we appreciate having a little room to get in there and get that done. You know, we use a loader and a truck and the guys, and so they do need a little room to get into those piles. So.
And they're fast. I watched them on Warner today.
Yeah.
They whipped around right by Sherman, loaded it up, dumped it. I mean, it's a moving, it's a whole, it's not like the loaders, I mean, the whole thing is moving along as they're doing. I'm like, well, that is very efficient.
Yeah, this is my first time to experience a program like this, and they do an excellent job. Really appreciate my guys. They work very, very hard at what they do. So thank you.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Steve. A couple other things. You know, you may have seen in the paper that our very own Steve Glammeyer was awarded the, what's the guy's name again? Anyways.
William E. Corbett.
The William E. Corbett Award, which is a very distinguished award with the Colorado American Public, or the Colorado chapter of the American Public Works Association, and we're very lucky to have someone of Steve's caliber working for us here at the City of Fort Morgan, so thanks a lot, Steve. Appreciate it. And yeah. He hates it when we do this, but...
do it again. All right.
Way to go, Steve. I also want to announce a couple things really quick. We have some interim folks helping us out in Community Services Economic Development. Want to recognize Jenny Elrick in the back, and is she back there still? Or she leave? She's back there. Oh, there she is. Okay. And Ty Hamer, who's filling in for Community Services. Want to thank them and give them appreciation for stepping up and helping out while we go through transition. And that, I think, is all that we have. So.
No golf today? No.
How's it looking for the weekend?
Probably pretty good.
Good deal.
Anything else from council or staff? Bids, meetings, and announcements. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. There are no bids currently out. As Jeff mentioned, city offices will be closed Friday for observed Veterans Day. The Senior Center Advisory Board is scheduled to meet on November 14th at 1:30 p.m. at the Senior Center, and the Library Advisory Board is scheduled to meet November 20th at 4:30 p.m. in the Museum Community Room. The next City Council regular meeting is scheduled for November 21st at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. And I think during the course of those extensive official reports by officials and staff, we pretty much covered everything. Glameyer Public Works award, check. There will be no city trash pickup on Friday, as well as city offices being closed. The leaf pickup program is underway. Steve's kind of new, so he may think that all the leaves will be up by the 26th. They will not. There will be people raking them into the street well into December, so you'll be dealing with that. The Senior Center is taking a trip to White Fence Farm on December 14th. Registration is open until December 8th. And all that information is on the city's website. That's all I've got.
Thanks for clarification. Is there anything else to come before council this evening? There is not. This meeting's adjourned. Wow.